the Voice of America.
We close our program with a summary of world news. U.S. Joint Chief of Staff Chairman General John Shalikashvili is preparing to travel to Haiti Saturday to inspect the expanding U.S. military operation there. More than 10,000 U.S. troops are in Haiti to secure the country and prepare for the return of President Jean-Bertrand Aristide. Russian President Boris Yeltsin leaves tonight for Britain before next week's summit in the United States. Mr. Yeltsin will hold informal talks with British Prime Minister John Major at his country retreat. Monday, the Russian leader addresses the UN General Assembly in New York. The United States has granted Jerry Adams, the leader of the IRA's political wing Sinn Féin, a 14-day visitor's visa, his second this year. A State Department spokesman said the visa was granted on condition Mr. Adams not engage in any fundraising. The UN Security Council meets this evening to consider an easing of sanctions against Serb-led Yugoslavia. The session is expected to adopt a measure suspending bans on passenger flights to Yugoslavia and cultural and sports exchanges with that country. The action was recommended by the Five-Nation Contact Group. That's it for this edition of Newsline. I'm Lisa McAdams in Washington. Join us again tomorrow at this time for another edition of Newsline. This is VOA, the voice of America. This is the Magazine Show on the Voice of America. Hi, I'm Barbara Klein, coming to you from Washington. Another space shuttle returned safely to Earth. What the mission accomplished in just a moment. Also in this half hour, scientists discovered the gene that controls growth in plants.
Once you have the gene and you know the chemistry of it, you can now essentially manipulate plant growth with that gene. So this is what's been exciting to us.
We'll have details on that. Catch up with journalist David Lamb, who's bicycling across the United States. And we'll have the latest from country singer Kathy Mattea. All this is ahead, so stay with us.
I'm burning old memories with a brand new flame.
Astronauts from the American Space Agency NASA successfully landed the Space Shuttle Discovery on Wednesday. The mission lasted 11 days, and it included a couple of firsts. The first atmospheric research using a laser, and the first untethered spacewalk by astronauts in almost 10 years. Yet, despite the success of this recent flight, and the success of most other shuttle flights, some Americans question the value of space exploration in this era. They point to other priorities they say are more important, such as stemming the flow of drugs, cutting down on violence in the streets, and helping families cope with the economic challenges of the 90s. For NASA's perspective on this, we're joined by spokesman Ed Campion. Welcome to the Magazine Show, Mr. Campion.
Nice to be here.
Let's begin with this most recent shuttle mission. As I mentioned, there were some firsts here. But what value do these accomplishments have beyond furthering our ability to explore space?
Well, I think the important thing with the missions that we fly on the shuttle these days is their diversity, and a lot of them focus on planet Earth. It's better understanding our environment and how we as human beings are changing it, or how the Earth itself is changing. If we can better understand where and when significant changes are going to occur in terms of crops, droughts, that's going to have a direct impact on everyday lives. So it's not just a case of going out into space for the sake of knowledge. We're actually going out to get answers to problems that are faced here on Earth.
Have you found any answers yet from shuttle missions?
I think what we have found is a better understanding of the overall environment, that we finally, it's only when you get above the atmosphere and look down that you can get this sort of total picture of just how all the various influences that move land, air, water are all being affected by us, by our presence, or just in natural phenomenon, how that's really influencing our lives.
Can you point to any specific developments, though, that have come out of the space shuttle, either in medicine or in the environment, things that have practical impact on our lives today?
Well, the space shuttle is in overall terms, is a fairly recent. Even though it's been flying for over 10 years, it's still, a lot of spin-offs are still sort of just now coming out. If you look back a little bit further, since we celebrated the 25th anniversary of Apollo this summer, the spin-offs from that were just enormous, and the shuttle is sort of continuing that and refining it. By spending longer periods of time in space on the shuttle, we're allowed to examine how the human body changes in space. There's things like the astronauts experience bone loss whenever they go up in space. We're trying to understand that process. If we can get a better understanding of that, we can help back here on Earth with such problems as osteoporosis. So there's sort of a direct connection to things like that.
There are immediate budgetary problems, though, here in the United States for NASA as well as for many other government programs. So what do you say? How do you respond to those who say, how can we justify putting money into the shuttle program, especially when we haven't seen any concrete spin-offs, as you put it, yet?
Our budget is on the order of 3 to 4% of the overall federal budget. That was an incredible large piece of the budget in general terms. If you look at us now, we're down probably on the order of 1%, either just over or just under. And for that 1%, you're not getting just the shuttle program, you're getting the space science program, aeronautics, commercial programs, all the areas that NASA sort of drives technology and research in. And again, the problem is, a lot of times when you drive technology, I can't make a promise to you of what I'm going to deliver tomorrow by pushing the technology. Things aren't going to come together.
For the upkeep of the shuttle has been steadily cut from the NASA budget, touching off a debate about whether the space agency is going to have thin corners in some way. And might cutting down money for repairs or what has been
our overall priority ever since the Challenger accident has been trying to fly the shuttles in an absolutely safest manner possible. You're never going to remove all risk from space-wise, an inherently risky proposition. But what we have done is now what's happened is the money's been turned away is we have not lost the safety factor, but what we are losing is the problems in the processing or preparation for shuttle mission up. We don't have the extra money for overtime and extra bodies to stay on schedule. So what you're probably going to see in the future is shuttle missions probably are going to tend to slide a little bit if they encounter a problem. But we're always going to maintain that safety first posture.
Ed Campion is spokesman for the U.S. Space Agency, NASA. Thanks for bringing us up to date.
My pleasure.
At Michigan State University say they have discovered the gene that controls the growth of plants. VOA's Rob Sivak reports the finding is good news for farmers and consumers of the world's food crops.
The Michigan State research team believes they've found the long-sought genetic key to regulating plant growth, one that could soon produce everything from larger ears of corn and denser rose bushes to dwarf banana trees short enough to be mechanically harvested. The breakthrough, described in the September 16 issue of the journal Science, came after researchers isolated a gene in maize known as Iaglu. The gene is responsible for an enzyme that regulates how much of the growth hormone called IAA the plant produces and uses. Plant scientist Robert Bandersky and his colleagues, Jedrzej Shershin and Krzysztof Zhigwowski, copied the Iaglu gene, injected it into tobacco plants, and found it stimulated much fuller branch growth. The implications of that finding are startling, says Mr. Bandersky. By injecting plant cells with purified copies of Iaglu genes, botanically important and commercially valuable attributes like plant height, fruit density, and seed production can theoretically be changed to order, the dream of plant breeders since the dawn of agriculture. Not surprisingly, word has spread quickly within the plant genetics community of the breakthrough research at Michigan State University. Mr. Bandersky says he and his colleagues have received many inquiries from plant breeders and geneticists around the world who are eager to use the team's purified Iaglu genes in a wide range of plant improvement experiments.
I'm a professor of forest genetics in Sweden. Request this gene so he could introduce it to populus trees. Populus trees are used very widely in Sweden for pulp production, for paper use, and he would like to introduce this gene and hasten the growth of such trees. We had another request from a researcher in Texas, and he wants to use it to introduce into the banana plant, and he would like shorter, stockier bananas, possibly even of a type that could be machine harvested. And a researcher in Beltsville wants to use it in tomato fruit production.
Another virtue of being able to manipulate the Iaglu gene, says Mr. Bandersky, is that it means improved plant growth will no longer be as dependent on purchased inputs like chemical fertilizers.
Once you have the gene and you know the chemistry of it, essentially manipulate plant growth with that gene. So this is what's been exciting to us. Hopefully this will minimize the use of spray chemicals in the production of plants for food and fiber, and that this gene will really be of value to people in agriculture, crop and forest production, and even maybe for the home gardener.
Critics of genetic engineering continue to warn of the possible environmental hazards in forcing rapid changes to living organisms, especially changes that go far beyond natural evolutionary schemes. Mr. Bandersky acknowledges those warnings and concedes that research in this area is still full of unknowns. But he notes that Iaglu is not a bacterial product like so many bioengineered genes, but a natural plant gene, and one he thinks will make no difference to a plant's food value. As a scientist, Mr. Bandersky adds, the potential benefits of the Iaglu gene demand a full, if responsible, investigation.
Science gives us the freedom to do things and to try them, and hopefully we'll do them and try them and produce good results that are beneficial to people and to the environment. But maybe it won't be desirable to have bigger fruit or faster trees or something. Maybe there'll be secondary traits that are altered that won't be, would not be serious. It would not be a danger, but they might not be desirable. No, I think it'll have to be tried in many ways.
After 30 years of researching the mysteries of plant growth, Michigan State University scientist Robert Bandersky believes the fruits of his and his colleagues' research are nearly at hand. Michigan State has patented and begun to distribute the Iaglu growth gene, and Mr. Bandersky predicts that research will begin quickly now on a new class of genetically enhanced food and fiber crops. The first of those plants, he says, could be ready for field trials within a year. I'm Rob Sivak.
Scientists are also using genetic engineering to fight a disease that's destroying this year's potato crop in Michigan. The blight is similar to the one that caused Ireland's great potato famine in the 1840s. Researchers are trying to develop potatoes that naturally resist blight. Paul Franchuk has details.
Purdue University horticulture professor Ray Brisson has spent the last 10 years looking for a plant gene that could be transplanted into potatoes that would provide an immunization-like effect against the fungus which causes late blight disease. This devastating condition can wipe out a potato crop within hours. Farmers insist on government quarantine measures to protect against the blight. Farmers also destroy contaminated plants as soon as blight is detected. Fungicides are usually effective, but they pose problems as well.
Even though they're usually reasonably safe, and especially when applied properly, they're still real toxic materials, and we'd rather not use them if we didn't have to. So the fungus, the blight fungus, is becoming resistant to some of the most effective pesticides.
The solution, says Mr. Brisson, is a genetic alteration of potatoes using material from tobacco plants. A certain tobacco gene, when spliced into a potato, generates growth of a common plant protein called osmotin. But it is the variety of osmotin that is important. This protein takes aim at the fungus which causes blight. The resistance, however, is not long-lasting. Once a potato detects the fungus, the protein barrier works for only about 2 days. But that's long enough, says Professor Brisson.
It's very rapidly progressing disease, and also it requires very specific weather conditions. It wants to be very cool and very wet, which don't tend to stay around too long in the summertime. So when you're growing the potatoes, so if you can delay probably become unfavorable for the fungus.
Purdue University researchers hope to alter the genetic material in a way that helps quickly boost the potato's level of resistance to blight. Mr. Brisson says the process is somewhat like getting a vaccination.
Even though the potato is making some of these osmotin proteins, and they're not very good ones to begin with, but it's making some, okay, when it sees the infection by the fungus, it starts to make more of them, okay? But by that time, it's too late. The fungus has got a big head start. So what we've changed the way the gene is constructed, it's designed, so that the plant makes them continually all the time, sort of like in a pre-immunized state. Therefore, the fungus has a much more difficult time getting a start, an infection.
There is little prospect of seeing genetically altered potatoes soon, however. The research is tightly controlled and regulated. Many people are suspicious of the work. The only genetically altered fruit or vegetable now on the market here in the United States is what's called the Flavor Saver tomato. That went through years of testing before it was approved, and it is still the target of controversy. Purdue horticulture professor Ray Brisson hopes to start growing his genetically altered blight-resistant potatoes at a test crop next year. And he does not foresee government approval of the new plant, presuming there will be approval, before the turn of the century. Reporting from West Lafayette, Indiana, I'm Paul Franchuk.
Meanwhile, Americans are reportedly eating more seafood than ever. U.S. consumption of fish and shellfish last year was almost double what it was a decade ago. At the same time, sport angling is on the rise. It's estimated that about 1 in 5 Americans now fish for recreation. As a result, sports anglers and commercial fishermen are vying for a limited natural resource. And as VOA's Sam Eicher reports, the two sides are butting heads.
One of the latest controversies will come to a head on Election Day in early November, when Florida voters decide whether to ban the use of gill nets and other nets longer than 152 meters in nearshore waters. Ted Forsgren is executive director of the Florida Conservation Association, an organization which represents sport anglers. He maintains that commercial net fishing is badly damaging marine life and stocks of forage fish, which are food for recreational species.
The sardine fishery and the menhaden in Tampa Bay have been overfished and collapsed. They're now commercially extinct in the bay. It had major impacts in the ecosystem. The other problem that we have is that the gill and entanglement nets are indiscriminate takers of marine life. The industry likes to say that they're very selective, but they're not. Hundreds of juvenile green sea turtles have been killed on the east coast of Florida, and the cause has been directly linked to the entanglement net.
Mr. Forsgren contends that one of the worst examples of indiscriminate waste in the industry is the shrimp trawling fishery.
It has been documented again and again by scientists that for every pound of shrimp that's harvested in a trawl, another 10 pounds of finfish and other marine life is killed and dumped over the side.
Commercial fishermen deny these and other charges, which they claim are generated mainly by business interests, such as fishing tackle and boat manufacturers. Jerry Sansom is executive director of a group called the Organized Fishermen of Florida, which represents the state's commercial industry.
Propaganda campaign is simply an anti-competition move
that's cloaked themselves in this in environmentalism, and they're using certain specific examples that may have occurred around the world or may have occurred in Florida in the past as reasons for doing this now.
Mr. Sampson says recent regulations have already minimized the so-called incidental catch and that the sweeping accusations of harm to marine life are unfounded.
The accurate picture is that nets are very well regulated in Florida, that the managers have a handle on managing the resources and that they are rebuilding, and that the image of the big nets raping the seas and destroying all these resources is a totally manufactured one for the state of Florida. It simply does not exist here, and for the most part never did.
The question of whether Florida voters will follow the lead of other states, such as Texas, South Carolina, Georgia, and California, in restricting nets in nearshore waters, will be decided on November 8th. Meanwhile, sport and commercial fishermen are competing fiercely for declining recreational species such as salmon on the west coast and striped bass on the east coast. Such conflicts continue in the wake of reports that 40% of the nation's commercially important fisheries are depleted to a point where stocks no longer are being naturally replenished. I'm Sam Eicher.
From Memphis, Tennessee, on the banks of the Mississippi River.
David Lamb is bicycling across the continental United States, all 4,800 kilometers of it. He left earlier this month from his home in Alexandria, Virginia, making his way to Los Angeles, California. How's it going, David?
Not bad at all, Barbara. Done almost 1,200 kilometers, about a third of the way, roughly, across the United States, and the Mississippi lies about a mile ahead on the border of Tennessee and Arkansas.
Are you making better time than you had planned?
I'm really just about what I had figured, which is around 50 to 55 miles or around 70 kilometers a day. And, you know, it's interesting, I was looking at an old history book the other day, and that's exactly in 1810 what it used to take a stagecoach going from New York to Savannah, Georgia. It used to cover about 70 kilometers a day. So this is a real throwback. I'm doing what these stagecoaches used to do almost 200 years ago.
Well, and you're really seeing the land. Now, last time we spoke, a couple of weeks ago, you were still in Virginia. What's happened on the way to Memphis?
I cut all the way through Tennessee, a southern state, a very large state. It's rural back roads. It's the tobacco harvest season now. The corn is being cut. The tobacco is hanging in the sheds to dry. And I'm struck, among other things, by the fact that I'm really treated in the little towns I go through as something of an oddity. People just can't conceive that someone is bicycling alone at age 54 across the United States, and they come out and they walk around the bicycle and they want to know what I've got in my saddlebags and how many gears I've got and what problems I've encountered. So there's a real curiosity on this fellow biking through town, Barbara.
David, you have covered wars from one end of the globe to the other. I'm wondering, is anybody talking about the U.S. intervention in Haiti?
You know, I'm surprised, but in these little towns, the conversation is extremely provincial. In fact, one lady in a coffee shop some kilometers up the road didn't even know that there was a flap or a crisis about Haiti, and the people are really concerned much more with the weather, the harvest, the local football or sports team, and I'm really struck on what an isolated small world they live in the back roads of the United States, Barbara.
You plan to share your adventures with all of us at the end of this trip in a book. I'm wondering, over the past couple of weeks, have there been any incidents or events that might make it into the book?
You know, there always are, and I guess what I remember more than the scenery is the people crossing the Tennessee River in a little town called Haletown, Tennessee. A very narrow old bridge that used to be a toll bridge, and coal trucks were running both ways across the bridge. No room really for bicyclists. And I was talking to a couple of fishermen as I was getting ready to go onto the bridge, and a little bit intimidated because it's a mile-long bridge, and I was scared I was going to get flattened by one of these coal trucks. And one of the fishermen says, well, he says, why don't I just take my pickup truck and follow you across the bridge and hold up traffic that way? So, son of a gun, I got on my bike and pedaled across 6 miles an hour. He was right behind me in his pickup truck. Long row of coal trucks stacked up behind us, but gosh, he got me safely across the bridge, and he tooted his horn and drove on, and those are the little things that I remember from this trip.
It sounds so wonderful outside the city where everyone seems friendly. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you, Barbara. Fun to chat with you again today.
We'll talk to you in 2 weeks.
I'll look forward to it.
Check in with us. David Lamb is a journalist for the Los Angeles Times, having covered wars from Vietnam to the Persian Gulf to Rwanda. Now he's covering the United States on a bicycle.
I always wanted to be a country star. That was my dream. So if you want to be a country star, you wind up a best-selling novelist. That's the lesson.
Kinky Friedman has become a best-selling novelist, leaving behind his country-singing days. On our next Critics' Choice, Kinky Friedman talks about his books and music and shares a little homegrown philosophy. That's Critics' Choice, Sunday on most of these VOA frequencies.
Kathy Mattea has done anything but leave her country music career behind. She's enjoying the success of her latest album with the prophetic title, Walking Away a Winner.
I'm walking away a winner, walking away from a losing game.
Kathy Mattea is also the guiding force behind a new AIDS benefit album called Red Hot and Country. All in all, she's been very busy. VOA's Bernie Bernard has this update.
I'm walking away a winner, walking back into my life.
That's Walking Away a Winner, the title track from Kathy Mattea's latest album, which has been on the country albums chart for 16 weeks. The singer is also featured on a new release entitled Red Hot and Country, the fourth installment in a series of AIDS benefit albums. One of the first country artists to speak out about the AIDS crisis, Kathy helped rally her fellow performers to participate in this humanitarian effort.
We asked everybody to do a cut that had something to do with their influences. So we came up with all kinds of things. Johnny Cash is on there doing a recitation at the end of a Brooks and Dunn song, and he's doing a Bob Dylan song. Billy Ray Cyrus is doing it too, Mary Chapin Carpenter. I did a duet with Jackson Browne. Everybody from Carl Perkins to Marty Stewart to, everybody is on it. It's very eclectic. It makes a really interesting statement about what the influences are on modern country.
Other performers featured on Red Hot and Country include Dolly Parton, Mark Chestnut, Jimmy Dale Gilmore, Patti Loveless, and others, with a special guest appearance by rock trio Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Kathy Mattea's own contribution to the album is Rock Me on the Water, written by and sung with Jackson Browne. She recalls the initial reaction when she approached the country music community with an idea for an AIDS benefit album.
Really positive. There was a lot of strong response. The most difficult thing is that because country music has become so popular, there are lots of demands on everybody's time, and that's part of why it took so long to get the thing out, was just, for people to find the physical time to go record the music.
Rock me on the water. Rock me on the water. I'll get down to the sea. Gotta get down to see somehow.
Kathy Mattea's solo album, Walking Away a Winner, reflects her pop, folk, and bluegrass roots, which are combined in the contemporary country style. After more than 10 years in the music business, Kathy says she's developed a formula for finding the right songs.
You look really hard. When you're not a writer, you have to really always be looking for something to try on that feels like it fits you. And it's a all-the-time thing for me. I'm looking all the time for songs. I listen to records. I go see songwriters play. I go and visit friends. I go see publishers.
3 years ago, Kathy Mattea suffered a ruptured blood vessel on one of her vocal cords. After recovering from throat surgery, she went through a frightening period where she wasn't sure if she would be able to sing again. Fortunately, her voice is stronger now than ever before, and as a result, she says she has a different outlook on her life and career.
It's an amazing thing. Sometimes, you know, you think that your life is taking a turn for the worse and God is taking care